This old lady licked a spoon and put it in her coffee cup. She watched with a happy face as this young and handsome man drank her saliva. Not only that, she often secretly used this man's toothbrush to brush her teeth. She deliberately asked this man to help her pass the towel when she took a shower. Her behavior became more and more daring. She became more and more perverted. She eventually lost control of herself and caused irreversible consequences. Why did she do it? The main character of the story is an old woman. She has no children and no family. The only husband she's ever been close to is a domestic abuser. Joey has endured it all her life. Finally, one day, her partner fell to his death while repairing the roof of her house. The sudden death of her partner made Joey's life easier. She thought her days of misery were over. She was finally able to live a free life in her old age. When she went to the bank, she found out that her partner had not only squandered all her savings, but also left her with a huge debt. After paying back the money, Joey was so poor she couldn't even eat. On her way home from the bank, she passed a small park. A group of teenagers were skateboarding in it. They were carefree, they were young and energetic. This made Joey feel very envious. She couldn't resist getting a closer look. Instead, he was ridiculed by several people. They insulted her with a few dirty words. She turned around and left. As she left, she even threw the guys' skateboards in the trash. Joey decided to turn the family home into a bed and breakfast. She hoped to make a little money renting it out to support herself. It didn't take long. She had her first guests, a beautiful young writer, Mary, and Mary's boyfriend. In order to make a good impression on her guests, Joey tried to be as warm and friendly as possible. But Mary's boyfriend is not happy with Joe's enthusiasm. He is also critical and unhappy with her house. Mary was kind. She not only walked and chatted with Joe, she even comforted her. She claims that her boyfriend is usually like this. They often fought over it. She was also torn between marrying this irascible man and not marrying him. Joey then told Mary the story of her husband and herself. She advised Mary that she should think carefully about getting married. Mary and Joey were having a good time, but Mary's boyfriend insisted on moving out. After Mary left, Joey didn't even have anyone to talk to. She felt very lonely, and she was living on less and less money. One day, she used her spare change to buy 3 boxes of canned food for the family cat. On her way home, she ran into the skateboarding boys from before. They were still holding a grudge against Joe for throwing the skateboard in the trash. So they teamed up and blocked her in an alley and humiliated her with more vicious and nasty words. One of them even tried to lift her skirt. Joey finally got angry. She grabbed him by the collar and yelled like crazy. Her screams drew passersby. They fled. From then on, Joy's emotions became more sensitive and fragile. But a letter from Mary brought her great relief. In her letter, Mary wrote she had broken up with her irascible boyfriend. Since her parents died early, no one had ever said those thoughtful words to her. She was grateful for the reminder. She was happy for Mary, too. She wrote right back. They soon became pen pals. Mary's friendship rejuvenated Joe. She decided to turn her house into a long-term rental apartment in exchange for a steady income. And Joe was on the street. She bumped into a handsome young man, Eddie, who was browsing the rental ads. She took an instant liking to him. She offered to rent him her vacant room at a low price. Eddie moved in that afternoon. She was so happy. She put on her pinkest bow. She put on the brightest lipstick. And she put on a floral dress. She made herself look as young as possible. She gave Eddie a warm welcome. While refilling her coffee, she licked the spoon he had used. She put the spoon back in the cup and stirred it again. Then she watched him drink her saliva with a happy face. It was kind of gross. The next morning, Joey went into his room, again under the pretext of cleaning up the house. She took a peek at Eddie's personal belongings while he was gone. She also brushed her teeth with Eddie's toothbrush. It was disgusting. She learned that Eddie liked to watch football games. Joe set up satellite TV. She made it possible for him to watch the game whenever he wanted. She seems to have developed something like a love for Eddie. She wrote to Mary about her experiences during this time. Only in her mind, an unsolicited conversation turned into a romantic encounter. Her freakish feelings alone turned into sweet love. Eddie was ignorant of M's little mind. He thought she was just overly enthusiastic. Eddie was at home watching a football game that day. Joe was there with him. Then the skateboarders from before came to her door. They were cursing and swearing. They were throwing eggs at the window. Eddie yelled at them. Eddie thought he was just stepping in to protect a poor old man, but to Joe, it looked like a heroic rescue. Her teenage heart started beating again. Before long, Joey threw her partner's run in the trash. She decided to move on from the past and find a new life. In the following days, Joey's behavior became more and more daring. She started wearing high heels and strapless dresses around the house. She purposely asked Eddie to hand her a towel in the shower. She even let him take her for a ride on his motorcycle. Eddie finally sensed that something was wrong with her. He politely turned him down, but in the letter she sent to Mary, M claimed the two of them went for a ride on a motorcycle. They had a romantic and exciting day. She was completely lost in her fantasy. One day soon after, Mary was looking for inspiration to write. She was ready to come to Joe's house for a while. Joe welcomes Mary with open arms, but Eddie and Mary fall in love at first sight. However, Mary never wanted to take away M's boyfriend, so she didn't make her feelings known. But Mary soon found out that Eddie's attitude towards I was only polite and distant. The relationship was not as close as Joe had described. The so-called relationship is just a one-sided fantasy of Joe's. Late one night, Mary and Eddie finally got together. This scene was seen by Joe, who was spying on them. She was outraged. She feels betrayed by both her lover and her friend. The next morning, Joe's attitude toward Mary changed dramatically. Mary feels a little embarrassed. Mary wanted to talk to her, but Joe's face was very unpleasant. She refused to communicate. Reluctantly, Mary went for a walk around the neighborhood. She also talked to the neighbor who lived next door. She told Mary Joe had always wanted to have a child. She had gotten pregnant once when she was younger, but her husband didn't want the responsibility of being a father at all, so he forced Joey to abort the baby. Since then, Joe became withdrawn and quiet. She didn't talk to her neighbors anymore. She didn't even have a friend. She learned that Mary was Joe's new friend, and the neighbor was very pleased. They were talking. Joe suddenly called Mary back. She asked Mary if the neighbor had said anything bad about her. She also accused the neighbor of being a promiscuous woman when she was young. She had tried to steal her husband. Mary was speechless. She felt that Joe was now crazy. So she packed her things and prepared to leave immediately to let each other cool off. No sooner had Mary left than Joe rushed to the neighbor's house. She covered the neighbor with a pillow and killed him. Since the neighbor was weak and sickly, she didn't breathe soon after. There was no sign of struggle. Everyone around her thought she had died of natural causes. Joe also pretended to grieve and jumped into Eddie's arms for comfort. When she calmed down, Eddie asked her for Mary's whereabouts and contact information. Joe lied and said that Mary had gone to get back together with her ex-boyfriend. She also said they were getting married soon. She suggested that it would be best for Eddie not to disturb her. Eddie believed it. He felt lost. After Mary left, they lived a quiet life again, until a month later, Eddie received a mysterious package. Joe was curious to know what was inside, so she sneaked into Eddie's room when he wasn't there. Before she had a chance to look through it, he saw it. Eddie was furious. He accused Joey of not invading his privacy. Joe looked a little panicked. She made up a lie. She claimed that her son had died at the age of 16 after a tragic illness. If her son were alive, he would be about Eddie's age now. So she just thought of Eddie as her son. She couldn't help but want to know and care for him. These words touched the good Eddie. He forgave Eddie. He even promised to have dinner with her. At the end of the night, Em put a little sleeping pill in her beer. She put Eddie down. Then she went back through the package while he was asleep. Inside, she found a suspicious white powder. It turned out that Eddie had a drug habit. She tasted it out of curiosity. The drug worked quickly. Under the influence of the drug, she started to let herself go. She touched Eddie all over his body. When she woke up the next day, Eddie felt something was wrong, but he didn't know exactly what was wrong. And that's when he received a letter from Mary. In her letter, Mary told the truth. She also said that she was pregnant with Eddie's child. Knowing the truth, Eddie exposes Joey's lies on the spot. He said he would leave right away to find Mary. This statement completely angered Joe. She picks up a pen and knocks Eddie out from behind. The pen kept hitting Eddie's head hard and hard until he wasn't breathing. After Eddie's death, Joe saw a letter from Mary. She learned that Mary was pregnant. Joe suddenly had an inspiration. She came up with an evil plan. She dug a big hole in the yard. She buried Eddie's body and all his belongings in it. She took a large sum of his money for herself. Then she wrote a letter to Mary asking for peace. She claimed she'd figured it out. She no longer loved Eddie. She also said that she had just inherited a large sum of money from a relative. She was going on a trip to get away. So, she wanted to ask Mary to come over and help with the house and the kittens. Mary was convinced. She came over. She thought she'd be reunited with Eddie, but she didn't see him. Joe lied. Eddie had packed up and left in a panic after seeing a letter. Mary mistook him for a scumbag who didn't want to be responsible, so she didn't look into it. Before she left, Joey led Mary out into the yard. She pointed to a newly planted apple tree and told her she was going to start her life over just like this tree. Mary was genuinely happy for Joe. She didn't know that under this tree was buried, he was the father of the child she was carrying. After Joe left, Mary planned to check out the room where Eddie had lived. She found the room locked and unlockable. It turned out that Joe had turned it into a nursery. Her ultimate goal was to take the baby in Mary's belly for herself, but I don't know if at that time, Mary still has a chance to live.